What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mind Body Mushroom. Today we are stepping into a slightly different lane, but also not really. If you've listened to the show for a while, you know we talk a lot about questioning the stories that we're told. We talk about Western medical dogma, indigenous wisdom, and the narratives we inherit about health, healing, trauma, and what's considered normal. This is the same thing, flexing the same muscle, but just in a different context. Because the truth is, the stories that we're fed about our politics, our safety, our enemies, and our history shape our worldview just as much as the stories we're fed about medicine and the body and consciousness. And the people who control those stories understand that better than anyone. So today is the start of a multi-part series on false flags, manufactured crises, and the machinery behind modern political terrorism. Not as entertainment, but as a lens, a framework, and as a pattern that repeats so consistently through history. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I want to be upfront about something. This is not a conspiracy podcast. It's not turning into that, although conspiracies absolutely are real. And I think they get unfairly maligned as something that is unintellectual or patently false because it's a conspiracy theory. So without a doubt, I believe in my fair share of conspiracies, but that's not really the angle that I'm approaching this series as, and definitely not approaching the podcast writ large. I'm here because I've spent over a decade studying parapolitics, real history, real declassified programs, real operations that governments carried out in the shadows and then denied in the light of day. And when you understand how those programs work, like Gladio in Europe, or the Moscow apartment bombings, COINTELPRO, MK Ultra, the USS Liberty, 9/11, you start to see the same fingerprints show up on modern events. Events like the Charlie Kirk assassination, the National Guard shootings in DC, or most recently, the Sydney Bondi Beach shooting. I keep trying to record this full episode, but just when I think I'm ready to record, another event happens that brings me back to the cutting room floor so I can include it. I think the most manageable way of handling this massive topic is to do it in installments, and as it makes sense, and continue iterating off of what we discussed last time. Otherwise, this will never get published, and I will be consumed by the enormity of what I'm trying to accomplish. Now, Charlie Kirk is a good starting place, not because he is by any means the center of the universe, or because I want to martyr him or demonize him or turn him into something that he's not, but because what happened on that campus, and more importantly, what happened afterward, in the information fog, the conflicting statements, and the instant political weaponization is textbook. It fits the historical pattern almost too perfectly. And I think we owe it to ourselves, especially in this moment in history, to slow down and actually look at the events with clear eyes instead of fear-conditioned reflexes. Because when people are scared, they stop thinking. When they're angry, they start demonizing. When people start thinking, governments start acting. And if you've ever wondered, why do these events always seem to happen at the exact moment they're politically useful? Why do the initial details never line up with the official story that comes later? Why do massive policy shifts always follow immediately after these national tragedies? Why does anyone who asks questions get labeled as a conspiracy theorist before the dust has even settled? If those questions sound familiar, then this series is for you. Not to tell you what to believe, but to show you how belief gets manufactured. I'm calling this my Gladio series because while Operation Gladio is an actual historical event that we'll cover later in this series, Gladio as a recipe for manufacturing consent is imperative to understanding how many modern tragedies might appear one way at face value, while beneath the surface can conceal a very different and in many ways more horrifying truth. So this episode is going to be a little bit more of an intro, kind of a primer to what the series is about. And then in the next episode, we will cover the Charlie Kirk assassination, and not because it's the most important by any means, but because it is fresh and the footage is burned into everyone's mind, and the inconsistencies are so obvious that it serves as the perfect entry point into understanding the larger architecture behind alleged false flag operations. All of this is my opinions. It is conjecture. I'm not asserting that anyone is to blame. I'm not making allegations against anyone. This is all my opinion, and it's for entertainment purposes only. None of this is to be taken as fact. Okay? Don't ban me, YouTube, please. Then, in the coming episodes, we're going to move backwards into the documented history of Operation Gladio, into destabilization campaigns, statecraft in the shadows, into the events that shaped the modern world without the public ever realizing it. Now, this is not meant to be the definitive breakdown. A lot of other researchers have done phenomenal work on that, specifically with regard to Charlie Kirk, but really with all of these topics. Like if you're looking for a really deep dive, Charlie Kirk or 9/11 or like that, this is probably not the series. My intention is to do something a little bit different. I want to illustrate how major events like political assassinations and terrorist attacks have historically been one of the most reliable methods for manufacturing consent. Now, before we get into the specifics, there's one important concept that we need to understand, and that of the Hegelian dialectic, which is essentially a three-step pattern. It starts with a problem, which elicits a reaction, and that is solved by some sort of solution. But the trick is the problem is manufactured, and while the reaction might be organic or gently nudged, the solution was sitting on a shelf waiting to be rolled out the whole time. Take a simple hypothetical. A government, obviously not ours, wants to crack down on civil liberties, like speech laws, or deploy a new mass surveillance system, like Palantir. Hypothetically. They don't need to stage an attack, although I suppose they could. All they really have to do is let one of the many radicalized, unstable people out there go through with them. This gets exacerbated by social media and algorithmic echo chambers. And the attack happens, fear spikes, the public panics, and the government says, or people look to the government and say, like, what are you going to do about this? The government goes, well, wow, you're right. How could this have happened? And then very conveniently, here comes the shiny new surveillance tool or a policy initiative that just happened to be ready to deploy anyway, consolidating the power of the government in exchange for your safety. Now everyone can feel safe again because Big Daddy government cares. Sure, you're gonna have to give up some privacy and maybe a handful of your freedoms. That's just the small ones, the little ones. But after all, you don't want something horrible like this to happen again, right? Didn't think so. Then the questions start, well, how did this happen? Why does it seem like the government was asleep at the wheel? No problem, they got that covered too. We're forming an official oversight committee. We'll get to the bottom of this. And when the results come out, oh man, you see, this is embarrassing, but the FBI zigged and the local police zagged, and it was a really just unfortunate miscommunication. We thought they had the rooftop, and they thought it was outside of their perimeter, and the cameras malfunctioned. The crime scene was accidentally tampered with. Those logs got lost. The building got burned. The sole witness had a tragic accident right before they could testify, and so on. There's always a terrible but convenient answer for everything. A harmless whoopsie-doo. Nothing intentional, nothing nefarious. And now, wouldn't you know it, the new surveillance laws are in place. The new hate speech laws censored dissent. New fears are mongered. But don't worry, they'll never let it happen again until they do. And if you start digging into the official narrative, that's when cracks start to appear. Because there is no perfect lie. You can manufacture most of a story, maybe even 99% of it, but not all of it. The truth is the only version of the events that is 100% unimpeachable. And it's the one thing that we almost never get. People who search for the actual truth get labeled as conspiracy theorists. They're painted as unstable, racist, delusional, dangerous. At a minimum, they're confused and should be ignored. Because didn't you hear what the official committee said? You're not a conspiracy theorist, are you? I saw what the news said. Okay? Are you going to believe some guy on the internet? We're the goddamn FBI. We're CNN. Okay? Don't you love America? Democracy? Do you hate your country? Do you hate Jews? Do you want your friends to laugh at you? Do you want to embarrass your partner? Do you want to lose your job? I didn't think so. Now shut up and be a good boy or face the public shame. That is the formula. Understanding how intelligence agencies and the unelected parts of governments operate historically, factually, becomes a pattern that you can't unsee. It's like learning to perceive a new color or hear a new musical note. Once your brain can register it, you see it everywhere. And not to sound like a schizo, although I know I will to some of you, which is why I don't normally talk about this unless, you get to know me. But I genuinely believe we need more rational, reasonable, grounded voices explaining this history and uncovering this pattern. Because ignorance is exactly how we get manipulated. It's like trying to trick a child into eating vegetables. You might say, you don't say, do you want some veggies? Instead, you say, do you want broccoli or carrots? That's a false choice. Both outcomes were pre-selected. The kid just feels like they get to decide. But unlike a parent, our leaders aren't manipulating us for our health, although they might think so. In reality, they're manipulating us to solidify their own power, their own wealth and influence. But we are not children, and we're not asking for predetermined outcomes sold to us as choice. Now, I apologize that this preamble is going on a bit long, but it really is the foundation for everything that we're about to explore. We're going to look at the seminal events that changed society, events that, when you examine them closely, look unbelievable. Most recently, the Bondi Beach massacre in Sydney. Before that, the shooting in DC by a CIA-trained assassin, which we'll explore in future episodes. And a few months before that, there was the Charlie Kirk assassination. One of the most blatant, not even trying, sloppy pieces of deception put forward by every agency responsible for investigating it. And I'm going to walk you through that day and the subsequent investigations, or lack thereof, by the FBI, the local police, and Turning Point USA. I'll highlight what, in my opinion, makes absolutely no sense and appears manifestly false. Then we'll take a ride in the time machine all the way back to 1940 and explore the very real historical Operation Gladio, a documented fascist stay-behind armies created by NATO in Western Europe, conducting false flag terror attacks to combat communism after World War II. We'll look at Gladio as a formula and ask whether that formula is being applied today. We'll look at Russian false flags that helped usher Putin into power. We'll examine the attack on the USS Liberty, the original investigation, the revised understanding, and the implications. And then we'll discuss a very personal one for me, 9/11. Many of you know I enlisted indirectly because of that event, and I fought in the global war on terror. Friends of mine didn't come home. Their sacrifice was not in vain, but honoring their sacrifice means having the courage to uncover the truth, to speak truth to power, the power of the ruling class that sends the best of this country to die on foreign soil while enriching themselves through government contracts and the spoils of war. We need to wake the fuck up, to stop getting tricked by elites who think that we are too stupid to notice and too weak to stop them. This isn't going to be an easy deep dive, and I will do my best to stay grounded in the facts and respectful of the victims of these tragedies. If nothing else, I hope you learn one thing that shifts your paradigm and gives you the permission to ask more questions, to demand answers from the institutions sworn to protect and serve us. That's where we're going to leave it for today. Next episode, we'll look at the Charlie Kirk assassination. And real quick, I'm going to give a shout out to Wind and Sea Coffee, the world's best tasting adaptogen infused coffee products. Without Wind and Sea, this show wouldn't be possible. Spoiler alert, I own Wind and Sea Coffee. So, that really is the vehicle that helps me do things that I'm passionate about. And I'm absolutely passionate about coffee. I'm passionate about holistic wellness. If you've listened to any of the other episodes of this show, Mind, Body, Mushroom, we talk about alternative wellness, psychedelic healing. We interview a lot of veterans and explore how the Western medical establishment has really let people down, specifically people who have served this nation by joining the military. So we have we'll just tell you a quick little thing about some of our products. We have 3 coffee roasts, 2 roasts on the lighter side, 1 that's kind of medium, all organic coffee. We're infused with organic CBD compounds. You can also select functional mushrooms. Everything is USDA certified organic, made here in the US. I do the infusions myself. I bag them. We also now have adaptogen infused latte powder. So a matcha, ceremonial grade matcha in lion's mane, Loca Mocha, which is like a Dutch cocoa with 10 functional mushrooms, and then a moonlight chai latte, which is formulated for relaxation, sleep. This is going to have reishi, chamomile, a lot of those sort of cortisol fighting, parasympathetic nervous system engaging compounds, get you in that rest, digest, make you feel rested for the next day. So I don't think that good habits have to suck. A lot of people have maybe tried some of our competitors like Rise or Mudwater or Four Sigmatic, and at least from my experience and what it seems like a lot of people have noted is a lot of those products taste like shit. And if you got to hold your nose and slug it back before you drink it, are you really going to drink it? You're not going to get the benefits from it. So I myself am a huge coffee lover. I love the ritual of coffee. I love espresso and French press and pour overs and even just drip coffee. I didn't want to give that up just so I could get in the functional benefits of mushrooms and other adaptogens. So we have whole bean infused roasts using the highest quality ingredients that I can possibly source, all made here in the US. Obviously, the coffee is grown all around the world, but it's roasted right here in San Diego, California. And I oversee all of it. So it really is a labor of love. And it is how I have been able to create this life that I care deeply about and, find passions that really engage me and make me want to put out the best work. So if you want to support this, if you want to support me, please head on over to windandseacoffee.com. Click shop now. There's a bunch of different products and articles, and if you have any questions, just shoot us an email. Everything's lab tested. You can see the lab results. It's in the footer. Yeah, but anyway, I wanted to get this one out just so we can fucking get some content going. I had a couple interviews kind of fall through this month, so we're a little behind, but I wanted to put something out so that way what direction we're going, and have something to look forward to. So next episode, Charlie Kirk. It's going to be great. See you guys there. Peace.